yeah, he would give me a lot of crap. He'd make fun of me all the time for being the little white boy hanging out with the Hawaiians, and yeah, he
Praise
was just,
God.
Yeah, he was. I miss him a lot.
Hey guys, and aloha. It's Mark Sawyer-Chu.
And AJ Ellerington,
Together we'll be hosting the Christian Surfers Podcast
where we talk Jesus
and talk with surfers that love Jesus.
Tune in to hear some amazing stories.
Cool.
Pastor Nate Dorman,
Yeah.
welcome to the Christian Surfers Podcast, where we talk Jesus and talk to people that love Jesus. And you definitely love Jesus.
Yeah. Probably more accurate that he loves me and I hang on.
Amen. Yeah, well, we all do. We all do, right? Yeah. Thank you for letting us come into your house today and your home and making you clean up and get things all tidy for us.
Just out of shot is a toddler
toddler chaos,
Yeah.
but we wouldn't expect anything less because we've all been there. And you're in the thick of it. And, I think even though I've known you a long time, Nate, I think now it's like I think about you more often because our kids are the same age. Mm-hmm. We're both girl dads.
Yeah, holding it down.
2 little girls. And, try not to get too emotional here, but, everything that you're going through, it makes me, when you have kids, right, and you have a family, it's almost like God gives you new lenses and new eyes to see things, and you relate so much better, I think, with things, and obviously seeing other families. And so I almost kind of like feel like sometimes I'm in your shoes, and I think about what would happen to my family, but not to start the podcast on such a heavy note, but and we'll get to that because I want you to give us all an update. Your friends and family, and most of them know you, and how can we be praying for you and what's going on with you. But I'm trying to think when I first met you and how old were you when I first met you in the Grom, and you were. I think the QS thing, is that kind of like when you were competing. When did you start competing?
That was my first QS event. I was 19.
Okay.
I did a year of college and then took like a year or two off and traveled and then continued online while I was traveling. But yeah, I was 19, my very first QS event.
And you're 29 now, so that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you're old. I'll never think of you as an old guy. You'll always be like this Grom in my mind. But it's like, it's crazy. All these guys that we knew when we were young, like Rafe Hazelwood, which I just saw at your church, H2 on Sunday night here in downtown Huntington Beach. Like everyone's like a young man now. Like all these Groms that we knew or grew up around. Did you grow up in Christian Surfers in Myrtle Beach? Was that your first exposure? I know your dad, Doug's a pastor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
So I grew up pastor's kid. I was born in North Carolina, lived in Savannah, Georgia till I was like 8 or 9, and then Myrtle Beach after that.
Okay. And is that where you started surfing?
My very first surf was actually Tybee Island off of Savannah, Georgia, which, you're not going to travel there for surf, but it's a cool place to learn.
It's not like Reunion Island, a little different?
Yeah, small, a few variations, maybe a few less sharks though. But, so I grew up surfing there. And then when we moved to Myrtle Beach, we were like a lot closer to the beach and I could start riding my bike to surf. And so that was when I like...
Pre-e-bike days too.
Yeah. I still don't have an e-bike. You got to pedal, man. So we moved to Myrtle Beach and that's where I could bike before school when I was in like 3rd, 4th grade and just loved surfing. I did other stuff, soccer, swimming for a while, and eventually surfing kind of took over. But my dad was a pastor and now he's still in full-time ministry, training pastors and teaching. And
wow.
So that was my upbringing. And Christian Surfers had a chapter in Myrtle Beach. They actually met in a little town south of there, Garden City. And I think I was like middle school years that chapter was really, we'd do like trips together to the Outer Banks and just a lot of great friends. And every week we'd get together and it was just like a sweet memories as a young kid, young surfer to have people to hang with.
What a blessing to grow up in, your dad's church and having your dad be a pastor and being brought up in the Word of God. Who was your family running Christian Surfers?
No, not my family. It was another couple local people who kind of held it together.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were involved for a while, like you still are, pretty much almost your whole surfing life. And you would travel around the world competing, which is kind of how you met all these different Christian surfers all over the place. You were national staff with us at one point, right?
Yeah, so that kind of happened, like, was just like a cool open doors after I started competing and traveling. Just everywhere I'd go, I'd meet a local chapter, and always try to visit like a local church wherever I was, and through that met just a ton of people involved with Christian surfers. And now 10 years later, like, just feel like I have family all over the world, that every time I do get to travel, get to go visit folks that I would stay with on their couches when I was competing.
Heidi and Alistair and J Bay and
people
best
from
all
place
over.
Ever. Love Jeffrey's.
Nina's.
So through that, just connecting people around the world, and because I had the background with Christian surfers, I like reached out to a few people when I was traveling, and that kind of just opened up the whole group. And they just really supported and welcomed, and I've since been able to continue relationship with. So it's been really, really a blessing.
Yeah, Nate, thank you for doing that. I know, like, obviously you were there to, compete and win, but I think your first agenda.
Too much winning.
that's okay.
A lot of competing.
You're winning with God, and that's what's important. And I think, I was talking to a couple of the pro surfers that, Daniel Emsley and Reef Hazelwood and Raphael is staying with you here for the U.S. Open this week in Huntington Beach. It's like, you're going to win or you're going to lose a lot more than you win.
Yeah.
And it's not how you handle the wins, it's how you handle the losses, right?
Yeah.
And I think if I remember correctly, you were really just kind of like our organic missionary, relational missionary on the ground, traveling with these guys, and just the way it should be, right? And chaplaincy, CS had a chaplaincy program at that time with the then ASP, right now WSL. But and even though that's not around, you kind of carried it just by being this friend to everyone, an unofficial chaplain, if you will, on tour, traveling with, and you just loved on so many different guys and gals, and just people that were traveling on the tour that you're kind of like almost homeless, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone thinks it's
glorified homeless. Yeah.
You're sleeping on everyone thinks this is glamorous life, but you're really not making much money. A lot of times surfers are probably actually losing money, right? Because it's so much money to travel. A lot of them don't have sponsors, and even if you did, it's probably maybe some product or merch, but it's not enough to pay for all the bills and then save some, and then you're just there ministering to them, and especially, again, we're talking about losses and wins. Most often not, they're losing, right? And so who do they talk to? Who could they talk to? Who's a friend in their life that they could trust, that's unbiased, that's not a coach for another competitor, and just someone's just going to meet them where they're at and love on them no matter what, whether they're winning or losing, and that was you. Yeah,
and that also was kind of on accident. I just loved surfing and had that dream of competing professionally from childhood, and when those things kind of fell into place to pursue doing the QS, it was kind of just like I wanted to win. Was there to surf, and at the same time, that was kind of like when you're growing up in a Christian home and out on your own, like those are some of like foundational, just walking with Jesus times when you're traveling. The world's all there, and like realizing, no, like Jesus is the business, and I want to love him, I want to know him, I want to walk with him. And then while doing that and surfing, it's just like kind of look to my left, look to my right, and got all these new friends that we're all kind of mobile families a little bit, at least trying to like take care of each other. And so it just started like as I was growing in my walk with Jesus, and just seeing friends who didn't have that background or even that, just seeing the grace and goodness of God. And so I just started, we'd do like little Bible studies and dinners together, and kind of just invite everybody at a lot of the contests. So like wherever we were traveling, normally once during the event, we'd try to all get together and have dinner together and
say grace.
And just kind of share a thought from scripture, and but really just like those relationships and walking through really great stuff, walking through terrible things, and doing it together was a really, And since then, now I haven't competed in a few years, and just to see those friendships continue now has just been the greatest gift. It's, very grateful.
Hey,
Are you a young, frothing surfer who loves catching waves and sharing your faith with others? Do you want to make a difference in your surfing community and help others discover Jesus? Then you need to join Sea Salt, the Christian Surfers Advanced Leadership Training Program. Sea Salt is a program designed specifically for young surfers who want to develop their leadership skills, grow in their faith, and serve practically on the ground in existing surfing communities. You'll get to go on road trips, learn about theology and mission, and have loads of fun with other young surfers who share your passion for Jesus and the ocean. Sign up for Sea Salt today.
I love it, Nate. Thank you for doing that and being there for all those guys. Catch us up, because you've had a lot happen. You got beautiful wife now, Paula. You've got 2 beautiful children. Catch us up on the transition after competing, and then how you ended up kind of pastoring here, and obviously we'd love to hear what's going on with your health and how we could be praying for you there.
Yeah. So that story too was also an accident from my vantage. Obviously, looking back, I can see just God's hand and His faithfulness through the surfing, competing, and then the transition into pastoring. And that was through a guy, Sumo Sato, who he was very loved here in Huntington Beach. He passed away 5 years ago in 2018, March 2018. And while I was traveling, I kind of loosely based in Huntington Beach. I'd stay on couches and here in town between events, which would total like maybe a few months a year or something. And when I did, I met Sumo, and he was just, the biggest, literally, physically, very big man. They called him Sumo for...
And spiritually.
He was just a gifted sharer of the grace of God with people who had no context for what the heck that even means. And he just saw people where they were at with no agenda, no come here so I can tell you this spiel. He was just like, I want to love you. Mm-hmm. And so he taught that to me just as a friend. And I would visit their church, H2O, which ironically now I'm pastoring for the last 5 years.
Wow.
But yeah, so he just became a super good friend. We'd FaceTime all the time when I was traveling. And
it was almost like your mentor, chaplain.
Yeah, big time. And he would give me a lot of crap. He'd make fun of me all the time for being a little white boy hanging out with the Hawaiians. And
Praise God.
Yeah, I miss him a lot. But it was because of him and his faithfulness here in Huntington. When he was sick, he ended up having cancer the last few years of his life, and especially at the end, he was at home on hospice care. And I happened to be back in town for those months. Was still doing some competing that year in 2018.
Okay.
And he was at home, and kind of knew, I think, the end was coming. And they just give me a key or a code to the garage, and I'd just come over anytime. And I was doing school online at the time, so I'd just post up at their house a lot of those days and study and hang out and be with him. And they had some friends in from Hawaii, and some of the most heaven on earth moments I've ever experienced, I think, were in his living room, just singing and crying and praying and talking. And it was within a month, I think, about in 2018, before he passed away, he asked me and my really, really, really dear, great friend Kai to carry the church on. And so I was 23 at the time. I think Kai was 2 or 3 years older than me.
Wow. And
we were both single. We were both single at the time. And said yes to it, unknowing what that really meant. Obviously, being a pastor's kid, I knew church and whatever, but never thought that vocational ministry I would be
pastoring full time.
Yeah, but I said yes to it out of my love and respect for Sumo and love and just close, dear,
and obedience to God.
Yeah. So both of those, and then I think looking back, I can see God just definitely growing my heart for people while I was traveling with those group of guys, studying on the road, kind of preparing me even for pastoring, and then caring for Sumo and just being with him when he was dying. I think I just saw this is pastoring. It's not glitz and glam. It's loving people where they're at, and
the opposite.
He lived that so well, and just had made a forever imprint on me and my life. And then when he passed away, actually a crazy story, the day that he did die was March 11th. And my wife, now Paula, our first date was that day. We went to lunch that day, and then ended up later that night he passed away.
Wow.
So looking back, I can just see 2 just huge life-changing things,
moments.
Essentially becoming a pastor that day, and
God
started
giving you a wife
dating Paula, and
and a new job.
yeah. So it was just a wild season. I was in school still at the time, and
Where were you going to school?
so I did online at Liberty University, a school based on the East Coast. I did my undergrad, finished there, and then did an MDiv, like Bible stuff. Studied the Bible.
Got to have your MDiv.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you study at Portola in Costa Mesa.
Yeah.
And you'd have your little Nate shirt that you would sell to raise funds and fundraise.
Yeah, man. So yeah, all
You're
that.
a good student, Nate.
How I became a pastor, and so that's been 5 years now, 5 and a few months.
Wow, time has flown by. I remember when Pastor Sumo spoke at the Christian Surfers Conference in Carlsbad one year. I think he got sick around the same time as Poi Dog Gerard Smith, and I think Sumo originally came out of Hope Chapel here in Huntington, which is another great church, and thank you so much for carrying on his legacy and torch, and ultimately, the story of Jesus. And you've picked all these. What people think are glitz and glamour jobs, but they're actually the two hardest jobs you could probably have in the world: professional surfer on the QS and pastoring a local church. And I just love the whole home church vibe of H2O, and just like what you were saying, sharing about Sumo. Just you guys just welcome anyone that wants to come, no matter who they are or where they're at. So you and Paul are married now. You had that first date on the day that Sumo passed away. I know you were there with just tracking with him and his family with Chris Peck, and you were surfing from Cobian for a little bit, Hyperflex.
Yeah.
You had a great community around you. Tell us what it's been like pastoring the last 5 years here in Huntington.
Yeah,
I know it hasn't always been easy.
No, definitely not. So 5 years, and Paul and I got married like in that second year of pastoring in 2019, and then COVID stuff, which that was a challenging, stretching, growing season, and then
just a little.
Yeah. So honestly, I think I was reflecting like on the 5-year mark of H2O, and it's like, man, this church has every reason not to exist. Like, its founding pastor, who's just like a huge personality, passing away, and then handing it on to two like guys who have no clue what they're doing. And then in 2021, that just kind of got even more complicated when I found out about all my health stuff. I found out I had something called hydrocephalus, which had no idea what that meant. It was actually my eye doctor. Thank God, found some abnormalities on the back of my eye. And just,
did you know something was wrong, or?
I was having really bad headaches like every few months. But I was probably the most like unhealth aware. I was just healthy, but like I would just sleep it off or walk it off or whatever. My mom's a nurse, and so she's actually the one that like, I think when you're having too many headaches, and when they'd hit, it was like a day of the flu, like vomiting and migraine, and just
pretty
black
serious.
out the curtains, and really, really painful. But there was kind of, and then I get better, and then a few months later it happened again. And so that was like for probably a couple years, that year or two at least. And then my eye doctor in end of 2019. So we had just got married that summer. So like by like December, I got it sent in for an MRI, and then at this time, got him for an MRI sometime in 2020, I believe, and then found out it was hydrocephalus, which is basically your brain fluid, which all of our brains have. Cerebral spinal fluid is the like official name of it.
Okay.
It was coming into my head, and the drainage pathway out was blocked, and so it would just fill up my brain and put a lot of pressure. And
that was causing the headache.
That was causing the headaches, which untreated can be like strokes, can be fatal. I've met people who've lost vision from it. So it's like a very serious thing, but there are treatment options. And so basically end of 2020, Paula was pregnant with our first daughter, and we had to schedule. Our daughter was born in February 2021, and 3 weeks later, I had my first surgery in March 2021, and full brain surgery, went in, put a hole, basically. If you think of like a sink that's clogged, they basically like popped a new hole so that all that fluid would drain out internally, and your body like reabsorbs it. And it was a successful surgery, everything, like no complications immediately. But then after about a month, the headaches started again. So I was like,
That quickly.
yeah, like I was pretty wary. And I think it was exactly 7 weeks later. We were actually visiting some friends because all my surgeries have been down a couple hours south of where we live here in Huntington.
That's your specialist.
Yeah, and we were visiting some friends there just to hang out with them. And that night I woke up with the same like vomiting. And so I actually took a Uber to the ER at like 3 a.m. and
With your wife pregnant.
yeah, so we had our daughter.
Okay.
She was 3 weeks old.
Wow.
Had a daughter 3 weeks old, and then that was the first surgery. So this was a couple months later. So our daughter was like 2 or 3 months at the time. And ER again, and the doctor comes in, like we have to do another surgery. And they had to put in what's called a shunt, a VEP shunt. And that's just a plastic tube that goes down into your brain, and it runs under your skin and drains the fluid into your stomach. Or not the organ of your stomach, but like in between all that stuff down there. And so they put that in, and that worked for, I think, about a year. And then the shunt clogged. And it's kind of had just kind of off and on complications since that.
Do you
first
still have it
surgery.
now?
Yeah, it's a permanent drainage device. And so my most recent surgery was 2 and a bit months ago, May 2023. And so it's been kind of off and on. Like the longest I've gone without a brain surgery in the last few years has been like 11 months, 12 months. And then besides that, it's been like every few months. Basically the shunt blocks with whatever, something. I'm no doctor. But it blocks and then it creates all the symptoms again. And so back in May, I had one at the start of May. And again, at each time, it's like, okay, it's working. And then a few weeks later, it kind of fails again. And so...
Interesting. So there's no permanent cure.
It's kind of managing symptoms, really. There is, like, the shunt is a tried and true tested thing. But my neurosurgeon says that hydrocephalus is like a curse for neurosurgeons just because it's notoriously complicated to treat it. So now I have a shunt, which is a permanent tube. And they went back in and did a second hole on the inside, so I've got like 2 drainage pathways now, and
but you wouldn't know just looking at you.
Yeah,
right?
It's just grateful to be like experiencing like the greatest hope having a kid, and then the greatest fear like kind of face to face with if I die, and then we've since been able to have a second little girl, and it just makes you so grateful for life and friendships and family, and realizing that God's with us in our junk and the crap of life, and he hates the real stuff. I've really experienced just his grace and his goodness, and he hates it too. I believe that none of this is caused by him, and definitely have had some psalm-esque like crying matches with God, like why is this, and but just to see his kind of walking with me and my family and those who love us and we love through that, in the middle of it, that he's like hadn't been some absentee person, but he's with us in it. We truly believe so.
Okay, recording.
Every surfer and every surfing community should have the opportunity to know and follow Jesus.
That's why we want to share with you an exciting new project.
The Surfer's Bible!
The Surfer's Bible won't just be in printed form, but it'll also be digital.
And this will include testaments, devotionals, and reading plans, all online and consistently updated.
As part of the global movement, you can make this fantastic idea a reality.
For as little as $10, you can get a printed Bible in the hands of a surfer who has never read one before.
That's a Bible in the hands of a surfer at the local beaches.
Lives will be changed and hearts will be softened.
For every surfer!
I think we did it.
We did it. Bill?
Are we done, or are we...
Yeah, Nate, thank you for sharing that. I know that wasn't easy. I mean, I couldn't think of something where you go more high and then having your firstborn, and then to go that low. The difference there so in such a short amount of time is unbelievable. It's just a testament to your faith and your character on handling that, because that a lot of people would not be able to handle that as easily as you did. How rare is this?
It's, I don't know how many cases. It's like a known thing. It often happens in little babies, which is just terrible. And that creates their head to swell. It's super nasty, just really, really terrible.
Is it genetic?
They don't have any, it's like a there's no linked genetic thing, because we had our kids checked for all the symptoms of it, and they were fine. And there's no history in my family of it that we knew of. So it was more rare to happen later in life from what I've understood. So I was 26, I think, when I first found out that I had it, and which normally it's most often found in babies. And so my doctor was like, and it can be caused by head injuries too, which obviously surfing, you're doing a lot of physical activity, but I never had like a thing that I was like, yes, that would have been the cause of it. So it's kind of been
30-foot bail, that pipe hitting the reef.
So it's kind of a mystery, like what caused it, but
wow, Nate. Well, thank you for sharing. I remember, going to some fundraisers for Sumo when he was still alive, and just praying for healing. And I don't know if you know, but our second daughter has a rare, disease as well that we had never heard of as well before we dealt with it. And I think Lydia and I have struggled with this, and we've been watching The Chosen, which has been really great. It took a while for us to get into, but now we love it, and it really has brought the Bible to life for us. All the different stories that we see told in there, and it's like little James, that I think what God has taught me through that show is that, like, well, God, why is it that some people get healed and some people don't? And the one thing I learned from that is, Jesus says, I could heal you, but imagine your story and your testimony. It's easy for people that have been healed to kind of like praise God and say thank you, but for those that aren't, like, how much more powerful is your story? And I think that's what I've been learning in this season, struggling, Lydia and I with Amaya's condition, and hearing your story, right? It's hard to really hold it together, and then obviously wondering, gosh, with Sumo and Poi and a lot of the Christian Surfers family, the last couple years, Aldo down in Peru has had his health issues. Rafael from Dominican Republic. There's so many of our close friends, right, that are dealing with these, yourself included. And it can be hard as a Christian on this earth, which is obviously a broken place, to grapple with that, but I want to thank you for sharing that and still pushing through and pastoring this little mighty church here, and humble, meek church in Huntington, even when you're not doing well and feeling like, so obviously we need to be praying for health and healing and supernatural peace, and what an amazing wife that God's given you to be there for you, in this season, and be a mom to your two beautiful girls, and be a wife to you. And so we need to be lifting Paul up as well. I know she took the kids to a park nearby, or picnic nearby, so we could have a conversation in private. What's next for the Dormans and H2O? And I know I asked you earlier, when can we have you come stay over back east? I'm sure your parents come miss you, and obviously you got these health issues that maybe prohibit you from traveling like you did. But we love to learn, and hear like what's on the heart and mission for you the next few years, and how we could be supporting and praying for you.
So definitely I think what would sum it up well, I've been studying Portuguese, actually. So my wife,
obrigado.
Her family's from Brazil. She grew up here, but
Does she speak Portuguese?
She does, yeah. So I've been studying just on like Rosetta Stone and reading little books and stuff. But the word for hope in Portuguese, I just was recently reading it. It just really, I think, sums up a lot of what is next. But the word for hope is esperanza. From what I understand so far.
Yeah, similar to Spanish.
Yeah, very similar. But it's actually a combination of two words: expectation and confidence. Expectation and confidence, esperanza. And Amen. I'm pretty sure I might get some corrections on my grammar.
Good.
Either way, it's beautiful.
Either way, we get what you're trying to say.
So I think that speaking of next, a big kind of occupier of space in our hearts and minds is my health, and have like kind of checkups and MRIs and scans coming up this year. So it's a confidence in already what Jesus has done, and that we can stand firm knowing that he hates sickness, he hates death, he hates depression, he hates all these things. And so that's why he came. So that's where we have confidence that he did do something about it. And we have expectation because we still experience these terrible, terrible things. And I think often we're tempted and want to have like a silver lining and want to he used it for the good, which he does. But I think at times it's like, no, it's just terrible, and he hates it too. And
it's not his original plan.
Yeah, and so that's where the expectation that he promises that he's coming back. And I love it. I think it's 2 Peter, something that it says something to the effect of like, wait for and hasten the return of Christ. To like, what kind of people ought you to be as you wait and as you hasten or speed up. And so with the church, that's our hope, is that we can be a part of the work God is doing here, bringing his kingdom, that he's already doing stuff, and we're just joining him at work in Huntington. And whenever I am allowed to travel again, I definitely greatly miss traveling. So that's why like, studying Portuguese has been fun for me. And then I'm actually starting another master's program studying anthropology this fall.
Wow.
And that's kind of just been a backdoor into travel and just getting to study culture and people and understand the way people think. And just to see, for me, I think it just is pushing me, and just seeing where does the gospel meet people who have very different views on the world, that you grew up different than I did, I grew up different than you did, and yet this Jesus came to bring hope and life to both of us and to both of our families from like opposite sides of the world. So yeah, next with the church is just continuing loving God and loving people. We say, give them heaven is something that Sumo used to say to us before.
Instead of give them hell, give them heaven, which is way better. I'd rather have heaven than hell.
Yeah, so we're just being community, taking care of each other, and
you're already doing it.
Life's pain, life's joys, and raising our 2 little girls. And and then I'll be studying this fall. And
I love it. You're like the most studious person that's ever come through Christian Surfers. Besides Casey Cristiano as well. Like you've got like 20 degrees. I love it. We need people, smart people like you in our ministry and movement. How do people follow you? How do they get in touch with you? Obviously, if you guys are in downtown Huntington Beach, please make sure to check out H2O with Pastor Nate. Is there social media? How
so as far as the church, hbh2o.com. Okay. HBH2O, like oxygen.com.
Perfect.
And then, my Instagram, Nate Dorman, I update it sometimes. I'm not super consistent on that either, but
it could be a grind.
I definitely keep that open and check messages, and
awesome.
The way to like just stay connected with people from around the world. So
I love it. There you go. Obrigado, Pastor Nate Dorman, guys. Please be praying for him and his family. Nate, thank you so much for making time for us today on the Christian Surfers podcast, and just being real and sharing your story and the highs and the lows, which is what people need to hear. But you have that esperanza. you have the greatest hope that anyone could have on this earth, and that's what makes Jesus so different. And for those of you out there, if you haven't found him yet, please talk to someone like Pastor Nate or anyone in Christian Surfers that can help introduce you to Jesus. We love you, Nate. We're praying for you, pulling for you, but we know God is on your side above all, and it's so good to see you. Love you, buddy.
Thanks, Mark. Love you, man.